Sure, somewhere in your wanderings in the outdoors, you've discovered a cicada shell, those dry brown bug bodies clinging to the trunk of a tree when the 17-year locusts come out of the ground. When you see one of those, you get the feeling a miracle has occurred. They look all for the world like they were dead, but there's a neat slit there in that shell where a living creature has crawled out and dragged new legs and new feet and new wings, and they've taken flight. You can hear them, hear them in the night singing in the top of the trees, and if you could ask them, they probably couldn't even tell you where they left their old clothes. Barbara Brown Taylor, in one of her writings, said the empty tomb of Jesus is like a cicada shell. It's a neat slit in the back where the one who had been there is now gone. Now, when Mark tells the story of the resurrection, you got to know that when those women went to the grave, they didn't expect anything like that. There was no hope in their heart. They didn't go there thinking that this was a bad dream. They went to prepare the body. The New Testament is very clear. All the Gospels say the disciples of Jesus had accepted his death. Look, this is the first day of the week. They saw everybody going back to work like nothing had happened. The backdrop of Easter is the dull ache of a lost campaign. Peter, going down to the lobby, talk to our supporters, our workers, tell them thanks for all the work, but it's over. You mean it's over? Yes, he's dead. All the soldiers that were there, they agreed, yes, he's dead. Why didn't someone send a memo to Pilate? Just go on and tell him, relax, you're in charge again. When the women went to the grave, they expected nothing but death. And when they saw resurrection, or at least the lack of a body, they were bewildered. Look, no one was there to witness the resurrection moment. That was between Jesus and God. There were no witnesses because no one was there. When the women got there, all they saw was an empty tomb. The rest of them didn't see anything. Why? Because they were still in bed. But I guess it didn't matter that much because, you see, an empty tomb is really not the point. It's, as Barbara Brown Taylor said, a cicada shell with the slit down the back. The living one is not there. That's what the messenger said. The singing is going on somewhere else. Where? He said in Galilee. See, Jesus had outgrown his tomb. It was too small of a stage for resurrection. Business was among the living. The risen one had things to do and people to see. Where? Galilee. Why Galilee? I mean, wouldn't you think that we could have gotten a little more juice out of the apple here? Send them to Pilate's court, right? The palace. You let them show up there and say it's payback time, right? But no. Why Galilee? No one special lived in Galilee but his followers. Us. He came back. He came back to those who had loved him and followed him and at times misunderstood him and at times betrayed him. You know, when you read about what's going on up there in Galilee, they didn't appear to him. He appeared to them. If you want to look for proof in the Bible for the resurrection, that's where you're going to mainly find it. It's up there in Galilee. That's where the singing is going on. Paul talks later in Corinthians about these appearances. He says, they started in Galilee. First he came to Cephas, meaning Peter, and then it was to the 500, later to James, and then Paul said, last of all to me. Now, Paul never claimed to see the flesh and blood Jesus, but he saw it in the flesh and blood lives of those who had come to life after his death. Jesus appeared where? In Galilee. To his followers to us. Isn't that what God has always done? He just keeps coming to us. After we left Eden, he just kept coming and coming back. We talked about it through Lent, didn't we? We said God was the comic shepherd who wouldn't sit around waiting for the one wayward sheep to come home and get out in the path looking for him. It's a waiting father just running pell-mell down the driveway to knock the boy over with the whiskers and gladness of his welcome. Well, you would think after that bloody betrayal of Friday, maybe the seeking would end, right? Now we've gone too far away, but no. The God who has always comes to us does what he has always done. He comes back, even on the other side of death. Now, I think there's some people here this morning that would add their names to Paul's list, of those to whom he has appeared. I mean, there are people here this morning, in one way or another, you're here because, well, like Mary, Peter, you've heard your name called. Courtney, George. There are some people here, in one way or another, the Christ has met you, sought you, caught you, commandeered you to be a part of holy purposes. And you become a people who know we live not alone. Will Willimon, when he was the chaplain at Duke, was working with a young man, a student there. The young man came one day and said, I'm having a crisis of faith. What's the crisis? He said, I feel like I'm losing my faith. And he said, what's it about? He said, well, it has to do with the miracles, the resurrections. I'm just not sure how to fit that and make that work for me. And they talked. Willimon argued with them, friendly way, gave them some books to read, and never knew really what became of any of that. Years later, now Willimon is preaching up at Harvard University, and there's this young man. He's there, he's worshiping, and he seems fully engaged. And Willimon reminds him of the earlier conversations, and he said, what happened? And the young man said, well, there were some encounters, occurrences, coincidences that seemed more than coincidence. But he said, most of all, there was this sense of being summoned by someone greater than me. You see, he believed because he sensed his name being called by Jesus. The real proof of the resurrection is not in the empty shell. The real proof is in the presence of Jesus in the lives of those who love him and follow him. If you're looking to try to give some kind of proof, maybe the best thing to do is when people say, why is it that you believe? Just say, because we live. That's why. To our surprise, we have found that we never know when he's going to show up next. To our surprise, we found that we're not alone. So here we are. We're here once again celebrating this Easter truth. What implications does this have for our lives? I mean, is this just about kind of a promise of a cushy afterlife someday for those who get it right? No, it's more than that. N.T. Wright, the theologian, said, if we make it just that, then Christianity can be falsely accused of being pie in the sky, sweet by and by religion, rather than the kingdom come to earth as in heaven religion that it is. Now, the first witnesses of Easter, they knew that something had happened to their world here, now. Their world had been entered, encountered, transformed, rocked, reformed. Easter is not God saying, oh, here, let me help you get out of this teary, dreadful world. No, Easter is saying, let me show you what I'm doing in this world, here, now. Let's remember today, who was resurrected? Jesus of Nazareth. And where did he play out his life? On this stage, this world, here and now. God saying yes to that. Who did God raise? Jesus of Nazareth. Wasn't Herod, who tried to stab the baby while still in the cradle. Wasn't Pontius Pilate, who screamed at Jesus and said, I could put you down with one snap of my fingers. It wasn't Tiberius Caesar, standing there like a marble statue in Rome, saying, I don't care anything for peasants, particularly Jewish peasants. That life that we saw played out in Jesus, that life of healing, washing, feeding, transforming, redeeming, saving. God says, this is what's being vindicated. This I affirm. This I confirm. Do you see the implications of that for our daily existence? That very energy that Jesus spoke about and embodied, God says, that stays, that stands. That'll be pulsing beneath every moment of your experience. Is someone here today, dealing with a dead end? Someone may be struggling with a dead habit or a dead way. You're right there on the brink. Well, there he is awaiting. The light in the darkness. I don't know what someone here today may have lost recently, or in what way you're hemorrhaging, but I do know that Jesus is the Lord of life. Master over death anytime, any place. I know for me this means that the risen Christ means I will not be defined by my neuroses nor my limitations. When the voice within me or without me says, Rob, your destiny is shaped by your past. I say, no, God's my future. I know I can yet become what God in Christ means for me to be. Look, Easter is not primarily about death. It's about life. It's about life before death. Right here, right now. Oh, and this has global, it has cosmic implications. The issue at stake here is, what kind of world do we live in? Is human history just a bargain basement scramble? Get what you can before somebody beats you to it for power, for wealth? Well, Jesus went up against some of those principalities of hatred and treachery. He went up against them, and they snapped him like a twig. Let's not be overly sentimental today. We're not here to say that there are days it doesn't look like a Good Friday world. Anybody read the newspaper this morning? You watch CNN. You know that goodness gets mocked. A lot of times truth is on the scaffold and wrong is on the throne. It happened after Easter. Even after Easter, Herod, who was just a little puppet of Rome, and he went on a murderous rampage, killed James, and then tried to kill Peter. But beware doom-doers, death dealers. You tried to put Jesus out once, and his purposes and his life could not be stopped. That didn't happen just 2,000 years ago. That wasn't just last Easter. Who's knocking at the door? Easter continues. Easter lasts. Doesn't it kind of frustrate you sometimes at the church? We act like Easter is just a historical event. It doesn't really continue. So the church reads the opinion polls and sits around, folds its hands, and huddles in the corner. So let's keep a little paint in the wall, see if we can keep the doors open. The church living like Caesar's in control? No, that's not the Easter church. When I was serving in Fletcher years ago, bordering on our north side of the property, there was a beautiful stand of white pines. Been there a long time, and it's a lovely stand. They just kind of stood there like sentinel pines. But one year it was tough on those pine trees. One was lost to an ice storm in February, and then late in March, those spring storms came, and two of those giant pines were hit by lightning, and they died, and we had to cut them down. So we're having this board meeting, and a member of the board started talking about this, and he was really, he was just flamboozled by this. He was not happy at all about the loss of pine, and he got to the floor and he said, "We got to do something about this. We just can't keep losing these pine trees." And the chair of the board, with his tongue in his cheek, said, well, the chair will be glad to entertain a motion to have the lightning stopped. In all seriousness, that's what they tried to do in Old Jerusalem. Some of the forces of greed and hatred and treachery came together in collusion, and they said, we got to stop this crazy carpenter. See that his ideas don't get loose. String him up on a Roman gibbet and throw him in a cave. Make it as fast as you can. Put a rock over the entrance to it and double the guard. Just see that he doesn't get loose. That happened. But then Easter. Easter. The empty grave of Palestine is like the open mouth of God, saying to the centuries, these eternal purposes, oh, you can mock them, you can crucify them, you can delay them, you can detour them, but after you have done your worst to them, they will be standing there as deathless as life itself. This is a yes, but kind of message. This is such a big message that if you've been around here, you know the preacher asked for help. It takes more than one preacher. It takes more than one witness to preach an Easter sermon. We've been saying it. Who did Jesus come back to? To us. So you're going to be a part of being a witness. And sometimes on Easter, this preacher will just do that yes, but kind of message and say something like this. Well, you know, it looks like Friday, but the choir was here at the first service. Look, you're part of, it's called worship drama. You're on this, we're all part of this. You didn't just pay $5 to get in here to be entertained. You're part of it, okay? It goes like this, you know, I know it looks like Friday, but oh, it did look like Friday. And my Jesus, he was dead. When they took him down from that cross, they put him in a hole in the ground. They put a rock over it. And Mary and Mary Magdalene, they were just weeping, just crying their eyes out. Oh, and the disciples, they were like a little covey of quail. They were shut up in a room, pull the windows down, shut the doors. Somebody needs to tell them that was Friday, but oh, and now the cynics are loose. They're saying, yeah, we've been telling you this all along. What goes around, it just comes around. Life is just a hamster wheel going round and round. Nothing is ever really made new. Nothing is ever going to change in this world. Somebody needs to let them in on it. It's Friday, but oh, and Pontius Pilate and the Sanhedrin, they're having supper together, having a nice covered dish, and they're just strutting around, poking each other in the ribs. Oh, I think we've gotten rid of him once and for all. We're in charge now. Somebody needs to tell them it's Friday, but
Sunday's coming.
It's Friday.
Sunday's coming.
Oh, folks, this message is too big. You cannot leave it here in the sanctuary. You can't leave it out there in the parking lot. It has to get into your feet. Let the world know. It'll look like Friday, but
Sunday's coming.